It's my first time doing the creativity conference. I was asked by Dell to come in, and I'm excited to talk to you all, specifically more because this is not really geared towards any specific type of I'm not telling you how to make something. I'm not telling you about anything technical or about a specific studio. It's just about creativity. I feel like I've been very, very unlucky, which comes with a lot of hard work as well to be successful in this industry. And I wanted to share, it's actually been almost 20 years now, and I wanted to be able to share what I've been doing to not just succeed in this industry, but to take care of myself and how to really thrive. Because the biggest thing that I think when people talk to me or find out about what I do is they don't understand how I do all the things I do, because video games is just one thing, but I do a lot more. So let's share the screen. I want to be able to kind of walk you through some stuff, what I think helped me get successful, but also what I highly recommend. Just from, I've been able to share workspaces and studios and help some amazingly talented people and some legends in the industries and get to know them one-on-one. And this is just me regurgitating not only my experience and my information, but what I learned from them, as well as what makes them tick creatively and helps them. So I'm going to share my screen. I'll bounce back and forth. Do me a favor while I'm sharing the screen. If you have any questions at any time, just type them out and we'll answer as is. I'm not going to really we'll do a little bit of a Q&A afterwards. I'm going to kind of brush through this presentation as quick as I possibly can and then I want to be able to leave enough time where we can actually do back and forth QA, because I feel like that would be more beneficial. All right, here we go. So basically what I'm trying to kind of wrap up with you guys is how to succeed in creative industry. So first off is, who is this guy? Why should you listen to me? So I've been doing video game, like you mentioned, for 18 years. I've been doing education for 14 years, comic books for 6 years, music for 18 years, marketing, advertising for 10. Now, when I say I've been doing that, I've been doing it not just on a fun level, I've been doing it at a very professional level. For example, the last 5 days in Chicago is where I'm based. I was working hands-on for a big music event, Lollapalooza, where I manage one of the bands that performed at a couple shows, and I also assist someone within the Metallica camp. I didn't think I'd be doing that, but here we are. So some of the places I worked and why I feel like, maybe take what I say with a little bit of grain of salt, is I worked for Epic Games, which I work at currently. Worked at Disney, worked at Activision, Midway, Microsoft, Phosphor, High Voltage. There's a bunch of studios there, and I've taught with a bunch of different schools such as Think Tank, Columbia, DePaul, Pixel Vision, and a bunch of different places. So I've been around for a while. But here's what I really want to kind of say to you that will hopefully inspire you in a creative way. So I came from a family of very little money in the middle of nowhere. I think our town was around 300 people, and I had to go 25 minutes just to get to school. And I remember the talk of the town was when I turned 15 and they had a McDonald's come in. People were thrilled. So I used to cut lawns to save money. I then skateboard all the way across town to go to an arcade. And it was a store called Wags, where I would play Mortal Kombat, the arcade. And when I was doing my, when I was earning money working on a farm and cutting grass, I'd listen to Metallica. And you fast forward 30 plus years, and I've worked with Tony Hawk on several projects. I've skated with him, we're good friends. I worked on a bunch of Mortal Kombat games. I worked with Ed several times, the creator, and I've been working with Metallica on and off for about 6 years now. And it's one of those things that you should never let your circumstances that you're born into dictate where you're going to go later in life. And I feel like since I've been teaching college for about 14 years now, I see, it's a typical trend that happens is that people feel like, and I'm not saying this is everyone, that things are, they deserve certain things, that things will come to them. When the reality is nothing's ever going to come to you. You always have to go out and get it. And how do you kind of balance that? And I kind of came up with these ideas. So the pillars that I believe that you need to keep progressing through the creative industry and also thriving is that you really need to have a healthy lifestyle. You need to be really good at communication, organization, passion, tenacity, problem solving, skills, and then traditional skills and tech skills. So the reason why I leave traditional skills and tech skills at the bottom is because it seems to be that a lot of people are always focusing on what softwares they know. Beyond that, that's all they really focus on. They're not thinking about all the other skill sets that is involved to make them a good team player for a studio setting, or even just like a freelancer contractor. Because when you're a freelance and contract, reality is you're never working by yourself. So there's huge skills that you need to maintain in order to like keep those relationships up with those different studios. So let's just kind of start glossing through these. And if anyone's interested in this information, I'll share my contact information after this, and I'll also share this deck with you because there's hyperlinks in there for further reading if you'd like. So healthy lifestyle. I don't think people take this serious enough. I've worked at studios where people eat terrible, or they give away free fountain soda, and there's like free pie day, free cake day. There's a studio, I'm not gonna say which one, where that was the case. And I remember talking to their HR and them saying, oh yeah, we got great dental. I'm like, that's cool. But they kept on stressing it. And I was like, why? Well, a lot of people get cavities here. I'm like, why? Well, we tend to have free cake day, free pie day, unlimited fountain drinks. And it just didn't really make sense to me because those things spike your sugar levels and then you crash afterwards. And then after a while, I started noticing everyone that I was working with at that particular studio was always tired, always in a bad mood. And then just like their work progress, like everything they were putting out was just really, really slow. So when we talk about healthy stuff, like I've sat in classes where I've taught students and I see someone, I've had so many students in my classes sleeping. And it's not just a one-time thing. It's happened at least 3 or 4 times in the last 14 years. And so it's the same thing. What did you do last night? Well, I stayed up till like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. Why? I wanted to play that new game. Okay, that's cool. To divvy up your time better, what'd you eat? Oh, I had Mountain Dew and like some chips and some pizza. So the thing about the creative industry, the reason why I was really pushed by my parents to get in is because they did like more manual labor type jobs, and they didn't want me to get sore body and like injure myself. Which ironically, when you get into the creative industries like this, if you're not taking care of your like mental health and your actual physical health, it's goes down pretty fast. Because the reality is what we are doing, even though we don't feel like we're doing a physical job, is you're burning so many calories because we just do problem solving constantly. All the studio is really looking for is someone who's a good problem solver and who can communicate the ideas they have to solve that problem. People get hung up on like the technology aspect of it, but it's usually just problem solving. And what makes you good at problem solving is taking care of your brain and your body. So that's kind of things with like a balanced diet, sleeping, stretching, exercise, meditation, and puzzles, right? So when I talk about like balanced diet, again, I'm not going to dig super deep in this. There's hyperlinks here, but it's common sense. Most of us don't think it's common sense until we take a step back. And we basically, like, if your body's a car and you're driving it constantly across the country, like it's you stopping to fuel up like your Doc Brown with Millennium, not Millennium Falcon, with the DeLorean, and you're just throwing trash in there, right? You can't do that. You can't expect to eat high carb meals, high sugar meals, like really thick ones, and like be able to process information afterwards. There was a lot of times where I'd see people working at these studios and they would do, which they do when we have like more working late hours, they'd offer free food, and the food would come like an hour later, and it'd be like these thick, hearty meals, but everyone would be like in food comas for a good hour or so afterwards, and they would end up working even later, and then they come in again super tired in the morning, and their whole progress would just go down the drain. Now the flip side is I worked at a couple of studios, and I was like one of them that was really good, like Disney. I loved working with Disney and even Epic. Very, very healthy food. They took care of that stuff, and it was amazing once we saw when people started bringing in fruit instead of donuts, salads, and all those other things, like clean meals, and then really promoting other types of physical activities that we started to see, like at Disney and Epic. I rarely see people getting sick. Rarely. At the other studios I was working at, yeah, people would get sick, they'd chain smoke, and other lunch breaks, they'd be very angry and they wouldn't be able to have a lot of good ideas coming through. Because if you're not taking care of that aspect of who you are, it does basically it throttles what you're supposed to be bringing to the studio, which is the problem solving. So that's why that's number one to me. I feel like it's never talked about in colleges. I don't understand why. It should be, and I feel like it's not talked about at studios. Some of the most successful people I've ever worked with in industries, they take care of themselves. They eat super clean. They still have cheat days, all that stuff, but you can see it in how they like communicate, how they attack certain problems. They're there. Sleeping. I don't know about you guys. I sleep 8 hours a day. And when people say I'll sleep when I die or I don't have enough time to sleep, my biggest thing is, and there's 144 hours in a week. You do have time to sleep. You're just not prioritizing the correct things. So there's a reason why you need to be able to sleep, especially as a creative. Because A, I mean, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of amazing ideas when I sleep. But B, I want to wake up early and fresh and understand what I have to do the next day. And I don't want to be trying to coddle like this hangover type feeling I might have if I'm not sleeping enough. Someone's got a question. Yeah. But basically, of course, you're welcome, Chris. But basically, yeah, sleeping's huge. It's basically, it's kind of like, I don't know if the best way to explain it is, it's when you go by a highway, like I live in Chicago, it's like when they close down the big highways overnight, and then that's when they're doing their construction and cleanup. They're allowing everything to get done. If they don't do that, it loses its maintenance and like it just goes to hell, right? So that's what sleeping does. It literally will do a flush over your brain and then let everything come out. All those acids and all that other bad stuff that builds up in your brain all day from all the work that it's outputting, that's when it gets flushed out, right? And if you don't do that, that's when you start to feel so, why do you think you feel so bad if you don't get sleep? It's because of that. So give yourself that time, invest in that, because that's going to be huge. Next one would be stretching. Stretching is huge, especially when we're working at home all the time. We get emails sent from Epic so much about, make sure you're stretching. We're going to have daily stretching exercises because it's huge, because you don't want to be the person that develops carpal tunnel or some back issues because they just sit down, hunch, and work at their desk all the time. Stand up, go for a walk, stretch yourself out. I mean, I do yoga in the morning and at night, not terribly long ones, just 10 minutes each time, but it helps loads. And if these hands and like your back and your posture, your sitting is what you really need to rely on in order to function as that creative, you need to take care of that stuff. It does really help a lot with just reducing so much of the aches and just giving you, access to your hands. Exercise, huge. And I get that not everyone can exercise all the time. Like 3 times a week would be ideal, but stand up, walk, go for walks, get that oxygen going, pumping through your body. Again, this is all about, you need to fuel your mind and fuel your arms and hands, because you could have all these great ideas, but you need to have the eye-hand coordination too. Again, I'm blown away most of the time when people don't really put all this effort towards taking care of themselves. They rather just stare at a screen and work dozens of hours, and they're working hard, not working smart. And there's a reason why I'm able to do all the things I can while still getting hours to sleep and enjoying my life, because I work smart, not hard. And it's just like taking care of myself so that when I am sitting down, I do have more quality focused work as opposed to staring at a screen for like dozens of hours trying to come up with an idea. But exercise is awesome. Like it does so much for like circulating the blood. It helps with like stress. It gets me thinking, it gives me more energy. Meditation. Now this can go hand in hand with when you walk. I'm not saying you have to sit down and meditate every day, but really what meditation is, it's just really focusing on breathing. And I feel like so many students that I've worked with, and even like professionals, they're never really breathing. And they're always wondering why they're getting sick, they're getting tired, they have no focus. It comes to breath work. And for me, I have to walk at least once or twice a day, because that's when I relax. That's when I come up with my ideas. I was watching a documentary that they had on Disney Plus about Inside Pixar. And they were talking about this character designer, and what she does is she walks to downtown San Francisco, which is not that far from their Berkeley location. And she likes to go walk and observe people, how they talk, how they interact, what they wear, their body language and move. So traditionally, what I've always been doing in games and visual effects has been building sets and environments. So when I do it, I'm just staring at the architecture, looking around, but in the same breath, I'm breathing that fresh air. I'm going for a walk, I'm problem solving. I'm thinking about what I have to do for my next project, as opposed to sitting in front of the computer, staring at the screen. Just because you're sitting down at your desk does not mean you're being productive. You can work in other things. Puzzles. These are great. Like playing cards, putting a puzzle together, doing some little weird crossword game, or even just playing a video game in general. It's that eye-hand coordination. It's getting you better at problem solving. And you need to be able to access those different parts of your mind. So that way, when these different solutions come up to you, I was watching a documentary last night about movies we love, and it was specifically talking about how Jurassic Park was made and how they thought we could only do it with stop motion. Then we had to add motion blur to make it seem more realistic. And then when that was happening, there was these two artists that are over at ILM at the time who were like, we can make this in 3D. It had never been done before, but they knew they could. Everyone was against them. I mean, they got constantly suspended for what they were doing. Their bosses were like so furious with them, but they were able to do it because they problem solved, and they were so active with their mind that they knew they could like achieve this. So problem solving is huge. And it doesn't mean that it's like, how do you practice that? Puzzles, games, cards. So before we get to that, yes, health is huge. It's one of the #1 pillars, I think, that makes someone succeed in any industry. You look at anyone who's really thriving in what they're doing and truly happy and balanced, it's the ones that are actually taking the time to invest in their own health. Because if you invest in other people, that's fine. I get that you have to do that sometimes, but you should always invest that time in you first. Like I always start, I bookend my days. The first 3 or 4 hours of my day is just for me. It's me taking taking the time to wake up, stretch, go to the gym or exercise, go for a walk, cook myself meals. And I do that for the very last part of the day too. So in between, I'm giving myself like a chunk of time, and it may not be a huge amount of time sometimes, but I'm more efficient with it because there's no brain fog. There's no like thinking, because even though I'm doing these like kind of bookend areas where I'm actually working for myself and taking care of me, I'm still thinking about what I have to do during the day to a certain extent, so that when I hit the ground running, everything is all good. Communication is another huge one. And I'm not saying you have to be super likable, but at this point, communication is, you cannot be on a team, and a team is basically every single function of the creative industry, and not communicate. Now, you don't have to be the best communicator in terms of like Ron Burgundy, but you're going to be doing this so much. So some kind of like things to really think about, make eye contact with the person you're talking to, even if it's uncomfortable for you. That's, everyone's uncomfortable, right? It's only until you kind of let yourself let go just a little bit and get to know someone and trust them that doesn't feel as forced. Don't make eye contact too long, and blink. Don't make it weird. Speak normal volume, not too soft, not too loud. Pace yourself. It helps with the ums, ers, and ahs. Basically, if you find yourself saying ah, slow down. Allow for the natural pauses. But also, being good at communication is just also understanding when you need to listen. And if you don't feel comfortable talking in any of those scenarios, having good emails, being able to have clean files, all those things to me are just as good in terms of communication. So I'll brush through these ones. Communication, conflict management. So here's a huge one. I've seen so many blowups in classrooms and in studios where people are just so frustrated, they don't know how to deal with their anger. And this happens a lot because you're going to be working with people who are more tech-minded, who are more management side, who are more design or artistic. So you have different personalities coming in with different mindsets that want to attack a problem and solve it a different way. So there's going to be conflict. You just have to be more laid back about it. You can't get so attached and aggressive with it. You need to be able to step outside and think about what is best for the end, right? Don't be so stuck to your ideas that you think this is the only way it could happen. And that really comes in with managing your emotions. I mean, we talked about how, good critiques make for great creativity, because you don't necessarily have to take someone's word when they're giving you critiques. And if you're giving someone critiques in the creative industry, don't tell them, offer. Like, what if we tried this? Maybe we can do this. Can we try this? Like, approach it in a way where you acknowledge what's working and then offer possible other solutions, and then leave it up to them to move forward with it. Trust in them that they will take the information and that they will do what is best. And if you need to revisit it, that's why studios have these things called dailies and stand-ups, which happen all the time. And they're really meant to kind of keep everyone on track to see where's the progress going. So it's stressful to work in these situations if you let it be. I personally don't really get that stressed. I mean, there's still going to be times, because I'm never really attached to anything that I'm doing, because in my mind, am I getting paid? Great. Because this isn't my project. Someone hired me to do this project. If it was my project and I was solely working on it, yeah, I'd be a little bit more attached to it. But if it's someone else paying and I have another team working with me, I know when to drop my emotions off, so that I'm not a hurdle in development. Organization is always another huge one. I think, everyone's seen Silicon Valley. It's a great show. Same with Mythic Quest. They're fun takes on the game development and tech world. But we're talking about this stuff. So plan your year as much as you can for your larger goals and events. Plan your days and weeks for micro goals and events. Write down what you need to do. Email yourself before you head to bed, or write something down. Create a naming convention for your own stuff, your files. Set up Excel sheets if you wanted to see what's started and in progress and what's done. And just clean up your emails and use folders and storage like Google Drive or Dropbox. So you can't see because I have this amazing Iceland background on, but I have my wall covered in Post-it notes, and they're color coded for larger year goals, monthly goals, and weekly goals. I write down what I need to do each of those days. And sometimes I might forget something here or there, but for the most part, with all the stuff I'm juggling, I do a good job of maintaining. And it allows me to actually sleep like a pro, because I don't go to sleep thinking, what do I have to do tomorrow? I forgot what I have to do tomorrow. No, just look at the wall and find in the morning. And that for me was something that allowed me to sleep like a baby. Everyone knows project briefs change, technical issues occur, and sometimes aren't in the creative zone. So when I'm doing my planning, I always like to buffer my time. So if I know something's going to take me 6 hours, I'll say it sometimes. I might say it might take me 10 to 12 hours, because I don't want to assume that even if it takes me 6 hours, I'm not going to have technical issues. There are not going to be revisions. I'm going to feel 100% I might get sick, or I might look at it and be like, you know what, I'm going to try a different approach. And that's the one thing that you need to make sure you're doing. Oftentimes when I'm working with students, or even junior artists, and sometimes even like senior level ones, they'll budget themselves and they'll plan something that will be like, yeah, I can do this in like 3 hours. Like, it's a competition, but it's not really a competition. You just need to be honest with how much time it's going to take for you while you're planning with your producer and your project manager in the beginning of project. Because if you do that, that's what ties to the budget, and that's what allows people to set milestones. And the problem when you hear this word crunch is there's two reasons why crunch happens. Because people don't estimate their times correctly, because they think that if they say, I'll get something done right away, that's going to get them promoted or something, and it doesn't. And if it does, that means you're just getting even more work thrown onto you, and you've got this expectation set that that's just how you work. That happened to me at one of my jobs, one of the very first jobs I had. I wanted to look good, so I was just cranking out work. And then that workload became expected from me, and they just added on top of it, and I just couldn't maintain it. So I see people who do that constantly and don't know when to stop. That's why, sometimes the average shelf life you hear from times for creative, especially in the gaming and visual effect work, can be 7 years. But those are people who just work themselves all the time and burn out. And those are the ones who don't take care of themselves. Those are the ones that get carpal tunnel, have terrible health issues. But you need to, just pace yourself. Quality over quantity. I'm hiring someone because of who they are and what they bring to the team, not for how fast they crank out stuff. I want quality. So always make sure you're padding your content. And that kind of comes with good time management too. You want to be able to say that, if I'm going to start creating something in 3D or scene, I want to assume that my first couple iterations of me working on this are not going to be good. They're not going to be what I want. And that's why there's less stress on my end to start working on this stuff. I feel like when someone commits to a certain time period and they know they're only giving themselves one pass at this to make it great, then they're more hesitant to get started. But for me, I give myself that extra time and I really play with the first like a couple hours of working on something, just having idea, like having fun, like just pushing ideas out. Like I'll throw away like 90% of it, but I don't feel stressed. And I feel like I can just jump in and start like sketching or doodling or like blocking things out to kind of figure out what works and what doesn't work. So good time management also lowers stress, increases like your production quality, and just, you know, it makes it easier for everyone. Because when you go around for dailies, if you say something's going to take you 3 hours and the next day it's not done, and you know, and the day after it's not done, and you have to keep on pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, it doesn't really make you look good, right? And it gets you more stressed, and you'll be sitting in these meetings. So, you know, do yourself a favor, pad your hours. And this is another one too. Whenever I'm trying to work with someone, I use this a lot when I'm doing my contract work, is that SMART method. So there's always going to be these moments of niceties, and most of the time I like to dive right in to what they're asking me to do. And, you know, SMART method is just being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. So I want them to specifically tell me what they want me to do. Measurable means how much they want me to do. Is it something that I can do in that time period? Is it relevant to the project that they're doing, or for me, for what I'm working on? And can I get it done in the time period that they're asking for? So I try to like nail those things out right away. I try to have them give me that information so that I can really give them accurate estimates and see if there's something I'm forward on. These things are awesome too, by the way. I like to use Trello. That's just one example. Whatever works for you. It's just a great way of keeping track of, you know, you can go in there and log in all the tech items that you have. You can drag stuff into progress, something that's on hold, something's complete, something's ready for review. It's very visual and easy to kind of, it's fun to kind of push things around. Forest is awesome. Forest just keeps us from looking at our phones. Like if you download this app, you literally, the longer you don't look at your phone, the trees grow. And then for that day, you can put that tree in the forest, and it's pretty fun. And before you know it, because like phones can be a distraction, right? TV, all this other stuff can be distractions. So if you have this in the corner, you're kind of like, you don't want to touch it because you want your tree to grow. So those ones are great for me because it just helps with keeping stuff on time. Passion and tenacity. This is a huge one. You know, I feel like you need to have this basically inset in you in order to survive like the highs and lows that are the creative industry. So, you know, you need to love what you do, even when it's tough. You need to research and see what the industry is up to at least once a week. I mean, I've had these times where I've asked students, I'm like, well, what's your favorite movie? What's your favorite game? Who's your favorite director? Like, what are you watching this week? I don't have any time. Oh, I don't know. To me, that it's kind of a bummer because you're going to these schools that are so specified to do this very specified job, and you're not really familiar with the industry you're trying to get into. For me, when I was growing up, I loved anything that like ILM was doing, like just specific studios with the Nintendo, PlayStation. But like, you know, I could tell you everything you need to know about like Steven Spielberg, his cinematographer, his whole crew, which is weird for a 10-year-old. But I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew that's where I wanted to work, who I wanted to work for. Nowadays, it's like you need to understand stuff like that. You need to research to see what the industry is actually up to so you can keep relevant, especially when you're talking to people at conventions or even interviews. You need to listen to your gut, but welcome change to find who you are. I get that sometimes most people are like, well, I want to be a character artist. And it's because they like drawing, they've been drawing characters their whole life. But when you look at the reality of how many people are trying to get to be a character artist and how many jobs there are, you know, it's a very competitive market. So maybe feel like embrace being uncomfortable and being a little bit anxious to try doing something that maybe a studio is having a hard time finding someone position for because no one's really applying, like a technical artist position or something like that. Follow through on your word. This is huge. Earn your trust from your peers and your supervisors. That's literally got me so many jobs because I'll say I'm going to do something and I'll do it. Finish what you start. It'll give you a good bar to work from and others will notice. That's another huge one. Don't be the person that has like 90 unfinished projects and always goes through that same process. It's like, all right, cool, I'm gonna do the pre-production on all these projects, but you've never taken it all the way to the end. So if you don't do that, you don't really understand how good you really are and where you need to improve for the next ones. And envision the next step for yourself, like plan for it. Don't wait for things to come to you. So, being a self-starter who takes the initiative and seeks out tasks is huge. I worked with someone before, worked with many people that have had this mentality of working at a studio that when they're working someplace, they're like, well, I'm hired just to do this. I'm only going to do that and I'm going to go home. To me, that's a terrible attitude. It's a very like individualistic attitude towards working on a team. And, every single studio I've worked at, I always think to the point where I'm like, oops, I'm trying missing this stuff. Oops. Yeah. But the other thing that I would kind of say is that like, you learn more, you meet new people. Like a specific job I was working at Disney, I got hired to do like environments and sets, and then I finished all my stuff. So I started to help with other things like props and assets. And I started to dig more into animation. And, I just told them like, hey, show me what you want me to do. You might have to teach me a couple of things, but I'll do it. And ultimately that builds on my skill set, makes me form new network connections with other people on the team. And I want the best product. I want to be able to like do what I can to help make this thing succeed. And that's what you need to do in these creative industries. You can't be out for yourself. You can't be just, I'll do my task and I'm done. Now, if your task is something that takes up all your time, that's completely different. But if you're someone who finishes your stuff and you see the rest of your team struggling, help them. Get help. Like it's going to benefit you in the end. Problem solving skills. So these are huge ones. So practice and fail, then learn why you failed and how to improve things. I've failed so many times. I've lost over $100,000 at least in one scenario, and I learned a lot from that. Not from gambling, but you have to try things. You're like this hesitancy on failing or it not being something you enjoy or it being something hard. I've never really grasped. Kind of just, you want to dive head first in some of these things. And, if you are good at it, great. If you suck at it, learn something else, right? Failing is a huge way in order to improve. I remember when I first started working for Disney, that's when Star Wars kind of came around and they had us, like all the artists across all the studios, just start creating concept for what the new Star Wars stuff would be. 90% of it got thrown out. And to me, I didn't fail. To me, we helped them get that 10%, the ideas of what they really wanted to do. So, even if someone doesn't like your work or it gets thrown out, or if you have to redo something, it's not you failing. It's that you're helping the person who's above you get that quality piece that they need. Be open to trying different methods of development. That's why you pad your time. So you have the ability to kind of play around with different ideas. Research your topics on Google, Google questions if you need answers to. Be your own, advocate for solving these things. The worst thing you can do is ask someone something that you can Google. That's to me, it shows that you value my time less than your time. Your first try at any project will not be the best, so try more than once. Jump on message boards, ask peers or supervisors. This is also how you build your network. Watch tutorials, use websites like Polycount, ArtStation, other ones. Just get in there and just learn stuff. Like I'm watching tutorials, at least 3 tutorials each week. Sometimes I learn something, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I'll watch an hour and a half tutorial and I'll learn one thing, but I'm glad I learned that one thing. Oftentimes it's maybe like, oh, cool. Yeah. All right, cool. I am doing the right thing. Great. You need to think critically. So work on creative projects that aren't like working on creative isn't straightforward. So it's not going to be like A to B scenario. You're going to have all these different things that pop up, especially using technology, because you can't really predict sometimes, you're using these tools, and these tools are, you're going to encounter things because the tools don't really anticipate so much creativity or the amount of work that's going into it. So you're going to have things break sometimes, and you're going to have to deal with like different solutions to that specific issue. So just be kind of like, loose with things, but be able to realize that you need to adapt when something breaks. If something doesn't work, you can't find the solution. You can't find anyone that knows how to do it. Adapt, move forward. This is a video that, obviously, like I highly recommend it. I'm not going to keep watching it, but it's just, John Cleese, I grew up watching Monty Python. My dad showed it to me. I loved it. But he did a talk specifically on creativity and management and how like someone could specifically thrive in it. I make all of my students watch it for the most part. I really think it's a great talk because specifically one of the things they talks about out of that is how people function in open and closed modes. And if you have me in classes before or like that stuff, I'll mention it. And I feel like most of society functions in closed mode. They're more stressed and anxious about the tasks they have on their plate that they just want to get things done. And we need more people to function in the open mode where they're comfortable sitting with the problem, taking an extra day or week or hour, whatever it may be, to find that solution. And oftentimes you get greater results. And it doesn't mean you have to stay in that open mode. You then switch to the closed mode and you knock out those tasks once you know what you're going to do. But I feel like we live in this world, especially American culture. It's one of the ones where it's like work, 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 where you're not really allowing yourself to sit and try to really figure out the best solution and the quality solution, as opposed to like just, oh, I'm so stressed, I just need to get this done so I can watch my favorite show. You know what I mean? But this is a great video. I'll make sure that you guys get the slide. It's 37 minutes of just amazing jokes and great information. So, obviously you need traditional skills too. I'm going to breeze through this just real quick, just like Rambo. But this is the other thing. I've dealt with programmers, like like set technicians, all that stuff. Like, do I need to know how to draw? Yeah, everyone should know how to draw. Drawing is one of the best ways to communicate your ideas outside of talking and writing. It's great, because the biggest problem a lot of people have is they don't know how to basically say what is inside their head to someone else, right? So if you can draw, even if it's terrible, you're getting that one step closer. And that's why I think pop culture also helps too. Like if I was walk over here and say, hey, I want to make a game where we have Indiana Jones like magically get warped onto alien spaceship with Sigourney Weaver. You're already like, all right, I can see it. I don't know if it's going to be good, but you can already see it because I'm giving you key images from pop culture icons, right? So being able to draw on top of that as well as write things just speeds up that visual language that we need to make sure that we're sharing before we commit to a project. So it helps communicate ideas. Photography helps framing and focus on subject matter. Lighting helps with mood, but also limiting a path for design or even like for a specific scene. Color theory helps with mood as well as it can help make or break a piece. If something's too saturated or has like too low of a value, it can ruin something. Composition frames the work, helps drive the viewer's eyes, and painting and building or sculpting with your hands just helps with development. I can tell you that, building something with your hands after you work in 3D or vice versa, it really does make you better with that specific tool. And being able to draw, and then everyone's go-to excuse is, well, I'm terrible at drawing. Everyone's terrible at drawing. You start, you're terrible. No one's born amazing. You have to practice to get good at it. You have to develop that eye-hand coordination. And basically at that point, that's the huge part. So then, drawing tips, I'll share stuff with you guys, photography tips, just lighting and all that other fun stuff. And then we have some technical skills, and we'll make sure that also you're really leveraging these programs like Maya, Photoshop, ZBrush. I'm not going to list them all just because I don't have enough time. But beyond that, what I want you to be able to do is, like, if you're taking care of yourself, if you're communicating properly, if you're problem solving, if you're staying organized, it's going to allow you to start, like, if your job is to, if your goal is to get a job, you need to really ask these questions here. Like, what do you enjoy doing most skill wise? What are you the best at skill wise? What job titles interest you? What studios inspire you? Which developers or creatives inspire you? And where do you want to live? And I really have those questions for you that you're asking, because, sometimes when people are trying to work in these creative industries, whether it's animation, visual effects, illustration, comics, games, and stuff, is it a hobby or is it a passion that is a career? Because I love to cook, but there's no way I'm opening up a restaurant or going to culinary school. A lot of times I have people who, I love games. That's cool. That's not what working in games is. Or I love comics. I read them all the time. That's not what working in comic is. Or I love listening to music. It's like that's not the reality of what these studios are, these industries are. The reality is it's work, and it's very hard work, and it's very hard to get into these industries, but it's not impossible. And you would want it to be hard, because if you put in all that effort with your schooling and just all the other side jobs you have, and anyone can get into Pixar, ILM, or like Marvel or these different studios, it loses its value, it loses its allure. But the reality is there's like that's such a small fraction of people that work inside these industries. In order to get there, I truly believe that you have to be able to really focus on you, and the software and everything else falls later. And I wanted to kind of like show you, just for me, like just me kind of answering some questions. Like, I enjoy texturing. I'm best at modeling. Environment artist is a job that I'd love to be. Or like Naughty Dog, Play Dead, ILM, Pixar, Epic, like, and then Ridley Scott, Christopher Nolan. So I'm just kind of saying the things that inspire me. But once I answer those questions, I can really start to think about where I see myself going, and that kind of analogy jumps back to, you're that car and the road trip going across. But now I have a destination. All right, cool. I'm going to go work for ILM. I'm going to work for Epic Games. But I know where I want to go, and I can work backwards from there, creating the goals, the yearly goals, the monthly goals, the daily goals that take me there. And then, we could start going to the websites, for example, looking at the career section, seeing what they're asking actually for. And then you go back to review, we start to see that out of one of these big studios, all these things, they're asking for my hair, they're asking for you to understand shape, they're asking for you to have strong techniques with like creating foliage and whatnot, and be able to take minimal concept art direction. But they want to be able to make sure that you have, so this half is all that. The rest of it is self-motivated, requires minimal direction, good communication skills, great team player, being able to manage and organize work, foundation of traditional art. So over half of the things that these studios are asking for are not related to the software at all, right? And you start to think about people who work at these studios, and you're like, all right, cool. Like, sometimes someone might get a job, like graduate, they might not get a job for 6 years, or they might get a job for 5 years, or they might graduate and get a job before they even graduate. Don't let that journey kind of like distract you. But there's some websites, and it's called job hunting because you're gonna hunt for that stuff. But you got to figure out what drives and motivates you. You got to turn learning into joy, live life, travel, try new things, build experiences, and take care of your health. Do you have any questions? I think we got 4 minutes left. No. See any questions? Well, basically what I would say, I hope this stuff helped. I really think that, creativity lies in being able to give yourself the ability to be creative. And that lies by giving yourself the best tools, which is basically, if you take care of yourself and, your mental health and your physical health, then you're going to have the energy and focus. If you start organizing your days and what you have to do, you're giving yourself more time. You start getting better with communication, you speed things up. So creativity is, it's not a skill set, it's just a way of thinking. And I think anyone can be creative. It's just how creative can someone be given their surroundings. And if you take someone who like barely sleeps, eats like crap, doesn't exercise, never like is around anyone to communicate, and has lived in the same town, or maybe just plays the same things, watches the same things, their creativity is going to be shallow. What sort of mental measure? For me, honestly, going for a walk, waking up. I drink chamomile tea. I take my vitamins. Going for a walk, exercising. Those things make me feel super happy. Taking breaks, like I don't work on Sundays at all. I usually work 7 days. If I start 6 days a week, but at the end of the day, like the last 3 hours, I'll just chill out, watch TV, wake up in the morning. I just go for a walk, take care of myself, get my exercise out of the way, and I like to cook every single night. So that makes me feel good, because if I'm in front of a computer and I'm always like making digital things, something about cooking, which is like you're involving touch, smell, taste, and seeing, and all those different senses. It's just nice to kind of break it up. That helps me a lot. Question about being multi-talented, go for it.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate that. So I'm in my 50s, and in the course of my career, I've literally made money as an animator, cartoonist, designer, illustrator, writer, director, producer, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm in an interesting place, but there's never enough time to focus on everything. And if you're out of an industry for like 5 years, you might as well be a dinosaur. So what I struggle with is I'm constantly trying to struggle between, do I now focus on VR, AR, because I have this background, or do I just do a super deep dive in the children's book series that I'm working on currently, right? So it's this real pull between with so many options, I know that if I just did extreme focus, I might be able to achieve to a different level. But I also want to be relevant, because like that children's book series, well, I think I could devote a lot of work. It's probably not going to pay for my retirement, right? So thoughts?
Well, I would say learn Unreal. If you learn Unreal Engine, you'll be fine. Unreal Engine is just it's being used in actual production design, architecture, virtual production, visual effects, animation, everything like that. And that's the one thing that all these studios are looking for, not a lot of people are trained on. And specifically, if you have a background as well, and then you can become Unreal authorized and all that stuff, it's just going to make the caliber of what you do have more, and I strongly believe that like your age shouldn't really matter in that point, because you still are bringing something to the table. You're bringing your previous years of work to the table and your communications. Because like if you're worried about like certain things, but you're like, hey, I've got all this like experience doing communication, organization, team planning, building, all stuff, you got a lot to offer. But in terms of keeping your technical skills up, like honestly, Unreal. If you learn Unreal and you're like good at it, and you can match the like with your background as well, you'll be relevant. I promise you that. It's
Sweet.
Yeah. So I work, my full-time job is at Epic Games, and specific with the Unreal Engine, and it's needed like everywhere.
Okay.
And
That's great advice, man. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you go to it, Unreal is free to download, and there's Unreal Online Learning, which is free education stuff. So you can do all that stuff you can do it for free.
Thank you, man. Great talk, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.